Lena had always imagined her life following a simple, beautiful path. She grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and the neighbors were more like family. It was a peaceful life, filled with the comforting routines of daily existence. She married John, a hard-working farmer, when she was just 23, and from the start, they made a perfect pair. John had a quiet strength about him, a man who could spend hours working the fields without ever complaining. He was a good man, kind-hearted, and dedicated to his family. Lena, in turn, was nurturing and filled with love, a woman who dreamt of raising children of her own one day. They had been married for 5 years now, and from the moment they had said, "I do," their dream was clear. They wanted to start a family. The plan was simple, as most of their dreams were. They would live in the farmhouse John had grown up in, surrounded by green fields, with the sound of children laughing and playing outside. But what they hadn't expected was how hard it would be to turn that dream into reality. Months turned into years. They had tried everything. Lena kept track of her ovulation cycle, took the prescribed medications, visited doctors, and even followed strict diets and routines. Each month, they hoped for a positive test. But each month, they were left with disappointment. John, ever the optimist, reassured her every time that things would work out. But Lena could see the weariness in his eyes, the gentle sadness that seemed to be creeping in. He was patient, but she could feel his frustration building, too. The hope that had once seemed so real, so close, was fading with every passing day. The worst part wasn't just the failed attempts or the empty feeling she had when another month passed without a child. It was the sense of isolation that came with it. Most of her friends had children, and every time they gathered for a playdate or a birthday party, Lena felt like an outsider. People would try to be kind, but the sympathy in their eyes always felt like a reminder of what she couldn't have. Even her family, though supportive, couldn't hide the concern they felt. "Maybe it's time to try something different," her mother had suggested once, her voice gentle, but full of concern. It wasn't that her mother was unsympathetic. It was just that she couldn't fully understand the pain Lena was going through. She hadn't experienced the deep, aching desire to be a mother and the crushing weight of not being able to fulfill that dream. Lena had become a little obsessed with the idea of pregnancy. Every time she passed a baby store, she would stop and gaze through the window, imagining what it would be like to have a little one of her own. She would picture what their child would look like, how she would decorate the nursery, and what it would feel like to hold her baby in her arms for the first time. But those were just dreams, fleeting thoughts that would slip away when reality hit. She'd never been able to hold on to them. John noticed the change in Lena. She wasn't the same woman she had been when they first married. The sparkle in her eyes was gone, replaced with a quiet sadness. The nights were filled with silence, with both of them retreating into their own worlds. John tried to comfort her, but it was hard for him to understand what she was going through. He wasn't the one who had to carry the weight of infertility, the monthly heartache, the endless hope, followed by disappointment. He would hold her close and tell her that they would be fine. But Lena couldn't help feeling like she was failing him, failing herself. One evening, as the sun began to set over the farm, casting long shadows across the fields, Lena sat alone at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was almost unbearable. John was outside, working on the tractor, and Lena was left to her thoughts. She stared down at the pregnancy test she had taken that morning. Its result, as negative as it had been every other time. It wasn't the first test, nor would it be the last. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up and tossed it into the trash can. She tried to tell herself that it didn't matter, that she was stronger than this, but deep down, it hurt. The constant waiting, the constant hoping, was wearing her down. Lena's eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She didn't want to be a burden to John. She didn't want him to see how much it was affecting her. She had to stay strong for him, for both of them. But it was hard to keep up the facade when she felt so empty inside. That night, after dinner, as the two of them sat together on the couch, Lena could tell that John was holding something back. He seemed distant, distracted, and his usual light-hearted chatter was missing. She reached out to touch his hand. "John, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked at her, his face filled with concern. "I'm fine," he said, but there was a hesitation in his voice. "It's just, I've been thinking, maybe we should look into adoption. We've been trying for a while, and it might be time to consider other options." Lena's heart sank. She had heard John mention adoption before, but hearing him say it aloud in such a serious tone felt like a punch in the gut. She had always dreamed of having a child of her own, of carrying that child and watching them grow inside her. But hearing John speak so casually about adoption made her feel like she was being pushed aside, like her desire to be a mother in the traditional sense didn't matter. She didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. John reached over and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I know this isn't easy for you, Lena. I just want us to be happy again." Lena's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. She wanted to be happy, too. She wanted to find peace with herself, with their future. But how could she do that when it felt like everything she had ever wanted was slipping through her fingers? The next few days passed in a blur of emotion. Lena spent hours lost in thought, trying to make sense of her feelings. She loved John with all her heart, but she couldn't help but wonder if their dreams were just too different. He was trying to help her, but could they really move forward with a plan that didn't include the family she had always dreamed of? That's when she decided to take the next step. She made an appointment with a therapist, hoping to find someone who could help her make sense of the whirlwind of emotions she was feeling. Perhaps they could guide her on a path to peace, to understanding that being a mother didn't have to mean pregnancy. She knew it wouldn't be easy. It never was. But something had to change. She had to find a way to live her life again, to find joy outside of the pain of infertility. And so, as Lena walked into the therapist's office for the first time, she made a promise to herself. She was going to learn to redefine what it meant to be a woman, a wife, and a mother. She wasn't going to let infertility define her any longer. There had to be more to her life than this one dream. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time in months, Lena felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to her story than she had ever imagined. Lena's visit to the therapist was, for lack of a better word, a revelation. As she sat in the comfortable, dimly lit office, listening to the therapist's kind words, she realized just how much she had been bottling up inside. It felt like she had been carrying an invisible weight for so long that she didn't even realize how heavy it was anymore. Every conversation with John, every attempt at fertility treatments, every failed pregnancy test, it all weighed on her. The therapist, a gentle woman named Sarah, listened intently as Lena spoke about her struggles. "You're not defined by your ability to have children," Sarah said softly, her voice full of understanding. "You are a whole person, with worth and purpose, regardless of what happens with your fertility. You need to give yourself permission to live outside of the constant pressure of becoming a mother." Lena absorbed the words, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. She had never considered the possibility of living without children. She had always thought of herself as incomplete without them. But now, as Sarah spoke, Lena began to wonder. Could she really live a life that wasn't defined by motherhood? It was a scary thought. After the session, Lena walked out of the therapist's office with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. The weight on her shoulders was still there, but it felt lighter somehow. She had taken the first step toward understanding herself beyond the idea of being a mother. For the first time in years, she felt like she had hope again. The next few days were filled with quiet reflection. Lena spent more time alone, thinking about what Sarah had said. She loved John, of course. But she also realized that part of her had been so focused on trying to have a baby that she had neglected her own happiness. She had forgotten who she was before the treatments, before the constant disappointment. She had been Lena, a woman who loved to read, who enjoyed long walks in the countryside, who had a passion for painting things she had put aside in her single-minded pursuit of motherhood. It was during one of these reflective moments that she decided to go for a walk. The weather had been unusually warm for the time of year, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and earth. She had always loved the countryside, the peaceful rhythm of nature that seemed to match her own heartbeat. As she walked, her thoughts drifted to Cole, the cowboy she had met at the local bar just a few weeks earlier. Lena hadn't expected to meet him. She had gone to the bar on a whim, needing a change of pace after yet another round of fertility treatments. She had just wanted to be somewhere different, to escape the endless cycle of doctor visits and disappointment. But when she saw Cole across the room, something in her stirred. He was unlike anyone she had ever met, rugged and strong, with a presence that commanded attention. But it wasn't just his appearance that caught her eye. It was the way he carried himself, quiet, yet confident. There was something magnetic about him, something that made Lena feel like she was seeing him for the first time. Their conversation had been easy, natural, like they had known each other for years. Cole spoke about his life on the ranch, his love for the open land, and how he had moved to the area to start fresh. There was a simplicity in his words, an honesty that Lena found refreshing. They spoke about their lives, their dreams, and what they wanted from the future. And spent in 2012, with Undersing reading The Flash. As Lena listened, she realized how much she had missed talking to someone who wasn't focused on her infertility. They met a few more times over the next couple of weeks. Lena began to look forward to their conversations, their walks around the small town, and the easy companionship they shared. There was no pressure to be anything other than herself. She didn't have to explain her struggles with infertility or put on a brave face. With Cole, she was simply Lena, the woman who loved the simple things in life, who could laugh without guilt, who could be happy in the present moment. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking a small creek, Cole turned to Lena with a serious expression on his face. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over the landscape. For a moment, the only sound was the gentle rush of water. "You know," he said slowly, "I can't promise you a child. That's not something I can give you. But what I can offer you is something else. I can give you a chance to live without the weight of expectation, without the constant pressure to become something you feel you should be. You deserve more than that, Lena." Lena felt a knot tighten in her chest. His words, so simple yet so profound, hit her harder than she had expected. He wasn't offering her pity. He wasn't suggesting that they could have a child together. What he was offering was something different, an escape from the emotional burden that had consumed her life for so long. The idea of living without the constant pursuit of motherhood had seemed impossible just weeks ago. But now, as she listened to Cole, she realized how much she longed for it. She wanted to be free from the pressure. She wanted to rediscover the parts of herself that had been buried under the weight of her infertility. "Use me differently." Cole's voice broke through her thoughts. "I don't know what that looks like for you, but I can help you find peace. I can be a friend, a confidant. I can help you rediscover the things that bring you joy, without the constant pain of trying to become something you think you should be." Lena was taken aback. She hadn't expected Cole to offer such a thing. It wasn't about romance or pity. It was about something deeper, something more meaningful. He was offering her the space to heal, to be herself again, outside the confines of infertility. For a moment, Lena sat in silence, unsure of how to respond. It was a lot to take in, and yet, It felt like the answer she had been searching for. Could she really live her life in a way that wasn't focused on the child she had always dreamed of? Could she find happiness in something else? As the days passed, Lena continued to think about Cole's offer. She spoke to John about it, though she didn't fully understand what it meant yet. John, always supportive, listened carefully to what she said, but he couldn't fully grasp the complexity of her feelings. He still held on to the dream of having children, even if Lena couldn't. Lena knew that her path forward wouldn't be easy. She had spent so many years defining herself by her ability to become a mother that letting go of that dream felt like losing a part of herself. But Cole had given her a glimpse of what life could be like without that constant pressure. He had shown her that it was okay to let go, to be free of the expectation to live up to a role that wasn't hers to define. As Lena stood at a crossroads, she realized that what Cole had offered wasn't about abandoning her dreams, it was about embracing them in a different way. It was about understanding that life could still be fulfilling, still be rich with meaning, without the outcome she had always envisioned. Lena was beginning to see that there were many ways to find happiness, and that sometimes, letting go of one dream could make space for another, one that was just as valuable. The days following Lena's conversation with Cole were filled with both uncertainty and curiosity. She had never considered the possibility of living outside the dream of motherhood. And yet, Cole's words kept echoing in her mind. He hadn't just offered her his support, he had offered her freedom. He had given her the opportunity to step away from the constant pressure, to conceive and embrace a different way of being, one where her worth wasn't defined by her ability to have children. As Lena sat at the kitchen table one morning, sipping her coffee, she couldn't help but feel conflicted. Her mind raced with thoughts about Cole and the promise of a new beginning. What did it mean to use her life differently? Was she truly ready to walk away from everything she had ever known? She thought about her marriage to John, the man she had been with for nearly a decade. He had always been her rock, her partner in every sense of the word. But over the past couple of years, the stress of infertility had created a wedge between them. They still loved each other, of that she was certain. But their relationship had changed. The constant focus on trying to have a child had overshadowed their connection in many ways. There were nights when they lay in bed, side by side, and yet felt miles apart. It wasn't that they didn't care for each other. It was just that the dream of starting a family together had become all-consuming, and neither of them knew how to move beyond it. Lena had always been the one to keep their hopes alive. She had been the one to suggest the fertility treatments, the new diets, the new strategies. But each failed attempt had chipped away at her spirit, leaving her feeling more exhausted and hopeless with each passing month. John had always been patient, always told her that they would find another way, but Lena knew that the strain was getting to him too. He didn't say it outright, but she could see it in his eyes. He had his own dreams, dreams of being a father, and the reality of those dreams slipping further away was something he was struggling to face. One afternoon, while Lena was out for another walk, lost in thought about her future, she received a text message from John. "We need to talk when you get home." Her heart sank. What could it be about? She hadn't seen John in hours, and the tone of the message made her feel uneasy. She had been avoiding having a real conversation with him about everything that had been going on. It wasn't that she didn't want to talk. It was just that she didn't know how to say what was in her heart. When she walked through the front door, she found John sitting at the kitchen table, his face serious. He didn't smile at her, as he usually did. He was waiting for her to sit down. "Lena, I've been thinking," he began, his voice quiet. "About us. About the future. I know things have been hard lately, and I feel like we're both carrying around a lot of weight. I don't want us to lose each other in all of this." Lena sat down across from him, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. "I feel it too," she said softly, "but I don't know what to do. I've tried everything I could think of, and nothing's worked. I don't know how to move forward anymore." John looked down, his brow furrowed. I've been thinking that maybe we should take a step back from all the treatments. Maybe we need some space from all of this. We've been so focused on having a child that we've forgotten what we really mean to each other. We're more than just a couple trying to get pregnant. We need to reconnect, to find ourselves again. Lena felt a lump form in her throat. She had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it from John made it all too real. They had both been so consumed by the idea of starting a family that they had lost sight of the life they had built together. It wasn't just about having a child anymore. It was about rediscovering the joy they had once shared. "I don't want to lose us, John," Lena said, her voice trembling. "But I don't know how to stop trying. It's all I've wanted for so long." John reached across the table and took her hand. I know. But maybe we can still build a life together. Even if it's not the life we imagined. I still want us, Lena. I don't want to lose you." Lena nodded, feeling both relieved and scared at the same time. It wasn't a promise of easy answers, but it was a step towards something different. They would no longer be defined by their attempts to have children. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for them to build something beautiful, even without that particular dream. After that conversation with John, Lena spent the next few days in deep reflection. She couldn't ignore the bond she had with him, but she also couldn't ignore the part of her that felt trapped in a life she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. John was her partner, the man she had chosen to share her life with. But she also had to acknowledge that her own happiness didn't solely depend on him or on their ability to have children. That's when she decided to call Cole. It had been a few days since they last spoke, and while her mind had been occupied with John, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important she needed to explore with him. When she dialed his number, her heart raced a little. She hadn't planned to involve him in any of her personal decisions, but she also knew that he had helped her see things from a new perspective. He had offered her a way out of the constant cycle of disappointment, a chance to breathe and re-examine what really mattered. "Cole," she said when he answered, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About living differently. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think I need to figure it out. I need to stop defining my life by what I don't have." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Cole spoke, his voice was warm and reassuring. "I understand. It's not about running away from what you've been through. It's about accepting where you are and finding peace with it. Whatever that means for you. Lena, I'll be here." His words brought tears to Lena's eyes. It wasn't that she expected anything from him. It was just that for the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone in her struggle. She didn't have to go through this journey of self-discovery by herself. "I don't know where this is going, Cole, but thank you. I need to take some time for myself, to really figure out what I want," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I appreciate you being patient with me." "I'm not going anywhere, Lena," he replied. "Take all the time you need. You deserve to find your peace, and I'll be here when you're ready." As Lena hung up the phone, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to take the next step, whether that meant continuing her marriage with John, exploring a different kind of connection with Cole, or simply rediscovering who she was outside of her dreams of motherhood. She was ready to find out. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt hopeful about the future. She wasn't sure exactly where her path would lead, but she was ready to walk it on her own terms. As the days passed, Lena's mind swirled with thoughts of change. She had been reflecting deeply on the conversations she'd had with both John and Cole. Each conversation had left her with more questions than answers, yet she felt as though she was starting to peel away layers of herself that had been hidden for far too long. For years, she had defined herself by her dream of motherhood and the struggle to make that dream come true. But now, for the first time, she was beginning to understand that her worth didn't depend on becoming a mother. There was more to her life, and more to her identity, than that. The idea of change was both exhilarating and terrifying. It wasn't just about stepping away from the relentless pursuit of fertility treatments. It was about embracing a new version of herself. A version that didn't carry the weight of expectations, that didn't feel like a failure every time a pregnancy test came back negative. Lena had been so caught up in trying to have a child that she had neglected to focus on the things that made her feel alive. The simple joys, the hobbies she had abandoned, the passions she had pushed aside in favor of doctor appointments and hopeful prayers. She realized now that she needed to reconnect with those parts of herself. The parts of her that existed long before the infertility struggles took over. One of the first things she decided to do was return to the art she had once loved. Lena had always enjoyed painting. She remembered how, as a child, she would sit for hours in her room, lost in a world of colors and brushstrokes. Her paintings weren't masterpieces, but they didn't need to be. They were expressions of herself, of her thoughts and emotions, and for a long time, she had forgotten how good it felt to lose herself in that creative process. She dug out the old paintbrushes and canvases from the back of the closet. The familiar smell of paint brought a sense of nostalgia. The first time she dipped the brush into the paint and touched it to the canvas, she felt a spark of joy. It was a simple act, but it reminded her that she could still create, still express herself in ways that didn't have to do with fertility or motherhood. It was liberating. Lena spent hours over the next few days painting, rediscovering the simple pleasure of creating. She painted landscapes at first, the rolling hills and quiet countryside she had always loved. But as she continued, her art became more personal. She began to paint images that represented her emotions, abstract forms, swirling colors, and gentle brushstrokes that conveyed the complexity of her journey. Each painting felt like a step toward healing. Every time she added a new stroke of paint, it was like she was shedding a layer of guilt, grief, or frustration. The more she painted, the more she realized how important it was to honor her own emotions, to accept them, and give them a space to exist. For the first time in a long time, Lena didn't feel the need to hide her pain or push it aside. She allowed herself to feel everything, the sadness, the hope, the fear, the relief, and expressed it through her art. As Lena began to embrace her creative side again, she also found herself spending more time outdoors. The countryside had always been a sanctuary for her, a place where she could breathe deeply and clear her mind. She had spent so many years focusing on the dream of motherhood that she had forgotten to appreciate the beauty of the world around her. One afternoon, Lena decided to take a walk through the fields. The air was crisp and fresh, the sky a brilliant blue. As she walked, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The world seemed so big, so full of possibilities. She wasn't just a woman who couldn't have children. She was a person with her own dreams, her own talents, and her own path to follow. As she strolled along the familiar path, Lena thought about her conversations with Cole. He had given her the space to explore her feelings without judgment. He hadn't tried to fix her or offer solutions, he had simply listened. And in doing so, he had shown her that it was okay to feel lost, to feel uncertain. She realized that Cole wasn't offering her a quick fix or an easy answer. He wasn't promising to take away her pain or make everything right. Instead, he had given her something even more valuable, the opportunity to rediscover herself. He had shown her that she didn't need to live her life according to the expectations of others. She didn't need to be a mother to feel whole, and she didn't need to follow a certain path to find happiness. Lena's thoughts drifted back to John. They had been through so much together, and even though their dream of having children might not come true, she still loved him deeply. She knew that their relationship had changed, that the strain of infertility had taken its toll, but she also knew that they could still find a way forward. It might not look like what they had once imagined, but that didn't mean it couldn't be beautiful. That evening, Lena and John sat down together for dinner. The house was quiet, the sound of the crickets outside filling the air. They ate in silence for a while. each lost in their own thoughts. Lena could feel the tension between them, but it wasn't the same as it had been before. It wasn't the crushing weight of infertility pressing down on them. It was something else, a quiet, uncertain space where they could both breathe. Finally, John broke the silence. "Lena," he began softly, "I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about the other day. About taking a step back from all the treatments. I think it's a good idea. We've been so focused on trying to have a baby that we've forgotten what really matters. We need to find a way to enjoy life again. Just the two of us." Lena nodded, her heart swelling with both relief and sadness. She had been thinking the same thing. She loved John, but she couldn't keep living in a state of constant disappointment. They needed to rediscover the joy in their relationship, to find a new way to connect. "I agree," she said, her voice steady. "I think we've both been holding on to this dream for so long that we've forgotten what it's like to just be with each other, to enjoy the little things, without the weight of expectations." John smiled at her, his expression softening. "Even if it's not the way we thought it would be." Lena felt a sense of warmth spread through her. It wasn't the answer she had been expecting, but it was the one she needed. Together, they could find a new path. It might not lead to the family they had dreamed of, but it could still lead to something beautiful. As the evening went on, Lena felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she was ready to face it. She had rediscovered her passions, her creativity, and her sense of self. She had learned that she didn't have to be a mother to feel fulfilled. There were other ways to create meaning in her life, other ways to build happiness. And while the journey ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, Lena felt ready to embrace it with open arms. She was no longer defined by her struggle with infertility. She was Lena, a woman with a future full of possibilities, and she was ready to see where her path would take her. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet kind of change. Lena had taken the first steps toward redefining her life, and though the road ahead wasn't without its challenges, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had made peace with her infertility, not by accepting it as a defeat, but by understanding that there was more to her life than the dream of motherhood. The freedom she had begun to feel was a new kind of strength, one that allowed her to embrace the future without fear. One afternoon, as the golden light of late summer filtered through the trees outside, Lena found herself standing at the easel again. The brush in her hand felt familiar, and the canvas in front of her was like a blank page filled with potential. She had painted landscapes, abstract images, and portraits of herself, each piece representing a chapter of her emotional journey. But today was different. Today, she was painting something that felt like a culmination of everything she had learned over the past few months, a reflection of her rebirth. The brush moved with ease as Lena poured her thoughts onto the canvas. She painted a tree, its roots deep in the soil, its branches reaching high into the sky. The tree represented growth, resilience, and the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. It wasn't just a tree, it was a symbol of everything she had overcome and everything she still had to look forward to. The more she painted, the more alive the image seemed, as if it was telling her story without words. She hadn't shared her art with anyone for a long time, not since the early days of her struggle with infertility. But now, she felt the need to show it, to share this new version of herself with those who cared about her. It was an important part of her healing, and she wanted to honor the process. After finishing the painting, Lena stared at it for a while, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the canvas. It was as if she could feel the energy in the strokes, the story it told, the journey she had taken. She wasn't the same person who had started this journey. She was stronger, more self-aware, and more accepting of the person she was becoming. And she was ready to move forward, whatever that meant. The next evening, she invited John to sit with her in the living room. They hadn't had a heart-to-heart conversation like this in a long time. It was time to truly talk about what came next for both of them. "John," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About the future. I think I've finally come to a place where I'm ready to let go of the dream I've been holding on to for so long." John turned to her, his brow furrowed. "Lena, what do you mean?" "I mean," she said, taking a deep breath, "I've spent so much of my life trying to make motherhood happen that I've forgotten about everything else. I've neglected the parts of myself that were there before. I've focused on what I don't have instead of appreciating what I do. I want us to find joy in life again, John. I want to find joy in myself, in us, without the pressure to have children." John listened quietly, his eyes never leaving her face. He didn't interrupt, and for that, Lena was grateful. She knew that this wasn't easy for him to hear, but it was something she needed to say. "I'm not saying that I don't want to be a mother, or that I've given up on that dream forever," Lena continued, her voice softening. "But right now, I need to live for myself. I need to embrace who I am outside of all of this. And I want you to know that I'm still here with you, by your side. I'm just finding a new way to live." John took a moment before he spoke. "Lena, I love you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know this hasn't been easy for either of us, and I want you to know that I'm proud of you for doing this. It takes a lot of strength to let go of something that's been so important to you. I don't want to pressure you to have children if it's not the right time. I want you to be happy, and I want us to be happy, no matter what that looks like." Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. The weight she had been carrying seemed to lift in that moment. She had feared that her decision to let go of her dreams of motherhood would create a rift between her and John. But instead, it seemed to bring them closer, together. "I've always loved you, John. You've been my rock, and I don't want to lose that. But I need to be whole, too. I need to find my own way to heal. And I hope we can still find joy in this life together, even if it's different from what we imagined." "Ressus." John smiled gently, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out, Lena. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." For the first time in a long time, Lena felt a deep sense of hope for the future. She wasn't sure what would come of her and John's relationship, but she knew that they were both ready to embrace whatever came their way. They had a foundation of love and trust, and they were willing to build something new, even if it wasn't the life they had initially dreamed of. In the days that followed, Lena found herself focusing more on her passions. Her art became her outlet, a way to express the emotions she had carried for so long. She even started a small art class for others in the community, sharing her love for painting with those who wanted to find their own creative voice. It wasn't about making a name for herself or selling her work. It was about sharing something real, something that helped her heal, with others who might be on their own journeys. Lena also continued to spend time with Cole, but not in the way she had once imagined. He remained a supportive friend, someone who understood her struggles and had given her the space to find herself. They spent hours talking about life, art, and the beauty of letting go of rigid expectations. He didn't try to change her, but rather accepted her for who she was. Their friendship had evolved into something deeper, a bond that was rooted in respect and understanding. Lena didn't know if their relationship would ever become more, but for the first time, she didn't feel the need to rush it. She was content with where she was, with who she was becoming. As the seasons changed, Lena and John continued to grow together, finding new ways to connect without the shadow of infertility hanging over them. They traveled to nearby towns, explored new hobbies, and reconnected with the simple joys of life. They were learning to enjoy their time together again, without the pressure of expectations. One evening, as Lena sat in her garden, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long, filled with pain and heartache, but it had also led her to a place of understanding. She had learned that happiness wasn't defined by one single dream, but by the willingness to embrace life as it came. She wasn't the woman she had once been. She was stronger, more whole, and more aware of the beauty around her. And though her path wasn't what she had expected, it was hers, to walk on her own terms. And for the first time in years, Lena felt truly free.